We are coming to a close for one of the most random, craziest NFL seasons that I've ever been a part of since I started in this industry. And some of you out there are probably thankful that this season is coming to a close. But for others, you're ready, because for week 17, it is championship week. You are coming to the end of a season that you were able to grind through, that you were able to battle through. And if you're still standing right now, give yourself an applause and a pat on the back, because you absolutely deserve finding your way into a championship this season. Now, championship week falls on Christmas week, and our content looks way different during Christmas because of the time crunch that we end up having. So we are gonna do something very similar to what we did last year. Our first video of the week, today's video, is going to detail every single matchup on Thursday and on Saturday, and it is going to detail the matchup for every single position. Then the second start and sit video that comes out, that one is going to go over all of the games that happen on Sunday and Monday, and once again, the same thing. Every single matchup, every single position for that matchup as well. So today's videos, we are talking about quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends. There's a lot of information to go through, and the first matchup we're going to talk about is Dallas and Washington. One other thing that we're going to have to cover in this episode as well is where teams are landing in terms of playoff seeding. Have they already been eliminated? Are they looking for a first round bye? Where do we land in terms of players sitting for the last couple of weeks? That's all going to be important information. We'll talk about it in these videos. Now, the Cowboys and the Commanders have both been eliminated from the playoffs, and Jayden Daniels is the only player that I'm really worried about that has already been benched, and we knew that he wasn't going to play the rest of the season already. One thing to keep an eye on for both of these teams, if anyone were to be injured coming back into that game or going over to the next game, is where things could get a little bit dicey as teams potentially say, we're just going to shut down this player instead. Dak Prescott for the Cowboys is going to be a start. Washington is allowing the third most fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks. Javonte Williams, he's also going to be a start. Washington is allowing the sixth most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. With Javonte Williams, not a great week last week. He had 9 carries compared to 8 carries for Malik Davis. And because of that, it gives you a little bit of concern for how he's performed the last couple of weeks. But again, he's been banged up. If he's a little bit more healthy this week, that will be great. But keep an eye on it. If for some reason Javonte Williams ends up popping up as questionable, maybe unlikely to play, anything like that, we would definitely have to get a little bit more creative. But as of right now, if he plays, it's a solid matchup. CeeDee Lamb, George Pickens, both of these guys are going to be a start for me. Right now, Washington allowing the 9th most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. And then Jake Ferguson is going to be a fringe start. It is a solid matchup. Washington allows the 5th most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends, but Jake Ferguson has definitely been on the outside looking in when it comes to targets for the last several weeks. For Washington, Marcus Mariota is currently questionable as of right now. If he can't go, it will be Josh Johnson. And while this does seem like a fairly solid matchup to try and play Josh Johnson if you're in a 2-quarterback or super flex league, not necessarily sure that I want to try and do that on Thursday when you have plenty of decent options throughout the rest of the week. So for me, Josh Johnson would be a sit regardless of the type of format that you're in. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Chris Rodriguez. Right now, Dallas is allowing the 6th most fantasy points per game. They've been a little bit more stout up front since the addition of Quinnen Williams, but you can still run on them. Chris Rodriguez with a touchdown last week was very solid. He will be a start for me in this matchup. Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are both fringe starts because depending on what happens at the quarterback position, you can't necessarily trust either of these guys. Dallas is still allowing the most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers, but neither of these guys have really been super consistent. Even when Terry McLaurin was out of the lineup, Deebo Samuel wasn't giving us all that much. Ben Sinnott, he's going to end up being a sit for me. Tight end position, not necessarily being looked at right now, but Bates is also getting just as much run as Sinnott is. Detroit at Minnesota, and Minnesota could potentially be really banged up in this matchup. And we also have to know that Amon-Ra St. Brown could end up being questionable heading into this matchup as well. He's dealing with a little bit of a flare-up in his knee, and Dan Campbell made it sound like that they are hopeful that he will end up being okay and ready to go. But with it being a short week, and the fact that Detroit played a late afternoon game, Amon-Ra St. Brown's not going to have nearly as much time to recover as normal. Jared Goff, he's going to be a fringe start in this matchup. Minnesota is absolutely relentless on the defensive side of the ball, and how much they blitz causes problems. If Detroit had an offensive line like they used to, I'd feel a lot better about it. But Detroit's offensive line has been terrible. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be a start. David Montgomery is going to be a sit. Jahmyr Gibbs is going to have to make his work in the passing game, or he's going to have to get a huge run. But once again, they're not playing well on the offensive line right now. Jameson Williams, he would be a start if there's no Amon-Ra St. Brown, just because of the target share alone. If Amon-Ra St. Brown does end up playing, then he's going to end up being a start. Jameson Williams would sit right here as being a fringe start. And as far as the tight end position goes, last week we saw a little bit of looks going to the tight end position, whether it be for Firkser or Zylstra, but I'm not going to bank on either of those positions being fantasy viable enough to risk it in your fantasy championship. And if you're looking to finish 2025 strong, you can do that over on Underdog. And by joining us and playing some of the pick'ems that we talk about throughout the week, you could be locking in a ton of green before the first of the year. And one of their unwrapped promotions this week is a Jahmyr Gibbs gimme pick that is almost guaranteed to hit, and you can pair that up with any of the other pick'ems that we talk about throughout the week, whether they be in our videos or over in Discord. And right now, if you get signed up over on Underdog using code Headliners, you're also going to get a second super special pick that's almost guaranteed to hit. And when you play your first $5 contest, you're going to get $75 in bonus contests as well. If you've been wanting to try Underdog, right now is the perfect opportunity. The Minnesota Vikings have been eliminated from playoff contention. JJ McCarthy more than likely will not play this week. He ended up taking a pretty nasty shot to the hand and was not able to continue. Max Brosmer will probably end up being the quarterback this week, which kills a lot of the potential this offense had. But even right now, Aaron Jones is questionable. Jordan Mason is questionable. Jordan Addison is questionable. JJ McCarthy is going to be questionable. So a ton of questionable players on this team as of right now. The only person that I'm willing to definitely say I could list as a start right now is going to be Justin Jefferson. Last week was not a big week for him, but it was better than what we had seen for a majority of the season, and he is still looking to march towards those campaigns of getting to over 1,000 receiving yards and keeping that streak going to begin his career. Against the Detroit Lions secondary that is absolutely decimated right now, even Max Brosmer could get the ball enough to Justin Jefferson that he could have a solid day. For those of you that own a ton of shares of Denver players, then them losing last week was actually in your best interest. Yes, they have locked up a playoff spot, but the LA Chargers are hot on their heels for the division title still. So Denver is in a really similar position to like the Lions last year, where one slip up the rest of the season could mean they are down into the wild card and they don't get that coveted playoff home game. So for Denver, we're not going to have to worry about any of their players sitting anytime soon. They're definitely going to be playing through this week up against Kansas City, who's not in the playoff hunt, and they are also banged up all over the place as well. Bo Nix is going to be a start for me. RJ Harvey's going to be a start for me. RJ Harvey continues to score a lot of touchdowns, so that's what we're going to bank on, even though Kansas City has been really tough to run against. But also, RJ Harvey did a great job in the passing game last week as well, so hopefully we can end up seeing the same thing from him. Courtland Sutton, Troy Franklin, both of these guys are more than likely fringe starts. Courtland Sutton has been playing very well as of recent, but it is going to be a tougher matchup against Kansas City and their secondary, so he could end up seeing his ceiling just brought a little bit down, and Evan Ingram, he's going to be a sit. Chris Oladokun, I would be willing to bet that until he came in for Gardner Minshew last week, at least 50% of the people watching this video had no idea who he was. And now Gardner Minshew is hurt, didn't end up having an ACL tear, but he's on injured reserve. So it's going to be interesting to see if Oladokun will end up being the quarterback this week, if they're going to end up bringing in somebody else and having them start instead. I'm going to go ahead and probably sit any quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs this week, which makes this matchup against Denver nearly impossible to play anybody. I'll list Travis Kelce as a fringe start because he could end up seeing a majority of the targets, even though last week Pacheco led the team with 7 targets. Kelce had 4. Not bad, not great. He is super risky. But outside of that, I don't know if I can trust anyone against Denver's defense that's playing for the #1 overall seed still against a bang-up Kansas City team that isn't playing for anything. For me personally, I'm probably trying to stay away from this offense as a whole, and as of this recording, Rashee Rice is still in the concussion protocol. The Texans and the Chargers are both still in it, and both of them have playoff spots as of right now. But this could end up being one of the toughest defensive games that we see from anybody all season long. CJ Stroud is going to be a fringe start. Jawhar Jordan is going to end up being a fringe start. Nick Chubb didn't do anything last week. Woody Marks, he ended up being questionable, didn't play. If Marks were to play this week, he would be a fringe start. Jawhar Jordan, he would end up going to sit at that point. He didn't really do anything in his little bit of work last week after having a huge run the week prior. Nico Collins will be a start because regardless of how this game goes, you can anticipate Nico Collins having 8 or more targets. So at this point of the season, a player of Nico Collins' caliber, you're not going to be sitting them in your fantasy championship. Dalton Schultz scored a touchdown last week. Not a ton of upside outside of that, but this could end up being a matchup where they really have to utilize Dalton Schultz a little bit more than the wide receivers. And Houston's defense, really tough. For whatever reason, they let Ashton Jeanty get the best of them last week. Maybe they just weren't fired up for that matchup. Maybe they overlooked the Raiders a little bit, but I can guarantee you Houston is not going to overlook the Los Angeles Chargers. Justin Herbert, Omarion Hampton, Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, all of them are going to be fringe starts. They all have their place in fantasy football, and they all have potential this week. But that's just it. What is the potential? Is the potential touchdown dependent? Is the potential half PPR leagues for the wide receivers where you're getting at least 5, 6, 7, 8 targets? Here's the thing. Omarion Hampton, he's going to have to score a touchdown. I think in this matchup against Houston, his upside is limited, especially without that touchdown. Ladd McConkey is going to have to hope for a decent amount of volume. Quentin Johnston, he's going to have to hope for a big play, maybe even a big touchdown to make his day. And Justin Herbert, he's been playing well as of late, but that doesn't mean that a matchup like Houston isn't going to test him a little bit more than what he would like to be tested. All of these guys have a smaller floor and a higher ceiling, but the ceiling itself is going to be really difficult to get to. The last game of the early slate, Baltimore at Green Bay. Baltimore has to win. Green Bay has to win. Green Bay can technically still lose one game and make it in at this point, but I guarantee they're going to want to wrap it up sooner rather than later. But starting with Baltimore, a loss, they are out. Lamar Jackson dealing with a back issue right now. If he plays, he is a fringe start for me because I don't know how long he's going to be able to go. What if he plays 1 quarter and the back tightens up? What if he plays 2 quarters and they're down by 3 scores and he's not feeling it and they decide to pull him out so they don't risk injuring him future, especially for next season? I could see him leaving this game at any point in time. Hopefully, they'll rely on Derrick Henry and not forget that he exists in the 4th quarter like they did last week. I'm going to list Derrick Henry as a start. Zay Flowers, fringe start, because again, I don't know how long Lamar Jackson is going to last. And for the tight ends at this point, again, not knowing how long Lamar Jackson is going to last, and because neither of these guys have been nearly as good down the stretch as what we would hope, both of them are going to be sits as well. As of this recording, Jordan Love in the concussion protocol. Malik Willis dealing with an arm injury. Josh Jacobs dealing with a knee and an ankle injury. All 3 of these guys are going to be questionable heading into this matchup. And obviously, Jordan Love could end up clearing at any point in time. But as of the recording, he is still in the concussion protocol. If he clears, he's going to be a start for me. If Malik Willis clears and Jordan Love doesn't, then Malik Willis, honestly will be a fringe start. He would be a guy that I would take a look at in 2 quarterback or super flex leagues because of some of the running upside that he would offer in this matchup. Josh Jacobs questionable right now. If he ends up playing this week, he is going to be a fringe start for me. Emmanuel Wilson is a guy that I wouldn't hate flexing regardless of what Josh Jacobs does. Because we saw Emmanuel Wilson, he was the guy towards the end of the game. After that fumble that Josh Jacobs had on the goal line, they relied on Emmanuel Wilson way more to finish out that game. And if Green Bay can get a sizable lead, it wouldn't shock me if Emmanuel Wilson ended up staying out there way more often than Josh Jacobs. Now, if Josh Jacobs misses, Emmanuel Wilson is a start. There's no other consideration there. We'll go ahead and put him in our lineups. If Jordan Love were to play, Romeo Doubs remains a fringe start. Christian Watson turns into a start. If it ends up being Malik Willis, both of these guys would remain as a fringe start for me. And you probably already missed out on your Christmas opportunity at this point, but if you have someone special in your family or a close friend that loves to head out onto the golf course, then make sure you check out Caddy Splash before golf season fires back up. Caddy Splash has been one of the best additions that I have made to my golf bag in quite some time. And when I head out, when the weather warms up and there isn't as much white stuff on the ground, I'm gonna get my clubs looking really nice with Caddy Splash, and they're gonna help me keep them looking nice throughout the entire golf season. Head on over to Caddy Splash before it's too late, use code HEADLINERS15 and get 15% off of your order. And Headliner Nation, I know this video was wildly different from what you've seen so far this season, but because of Christmas this week, we really don't have a choice. So if you didn't feel like you got a ton out of this video, I apologize. But I'm recording this on Monday night. Typically, I don't start recording these videos until later in the morning on Tuesday when I have a little bit more injury information. So we're gonna have to wait on some things, and you will definitely want to check back on the rankings episode. When we do a video like this where I talk about every single position, I can't spend an hour and a half on the video. Everyone would stop watching. So the point to the start and sit videos this week is to give you a really nice baseline of our thoughts, and then coming back to the rankings episode will be way more important than it has been all season long. But do me a favor, before you get out of here, hype the video, like the video, subscribe to the channel, bell notifications, comment below. Whatever you can do to interact with the video, we would greatly appreciate. I've got one more video to record for the week. Headliner Nation, stay safe, stay healthy. I'll catch y'all on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.